dream. I was flying high, I was feeling fine. I won't be put in line, 'cause I'm ready to do my time.
Simply Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to the Simply Financial podcast. This is season number 3, episode 48. Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I am passionate about, and that is paying off debt. To kind of set the table, wanted to discuss just a few facts and figures just to bring to your attention how much of a debt problem we have in the United States. So to begin with, there's a 2017 study, a report from the Federal Reserve, and it showed that 48% of Americans reported carrying a credit card balance at least some of the time in the previous 12 months. So that means almost half of those in the report, they're carrying credit card debt, not paying off the balance, paying interest rates that usually are prohibitively high. So that's the first statistic. Secondly, student loan debt. Now, I've talked about this before, most notably in Season 3, Episode 1. I did a podcast episode strictly on the student debt crisis. In fact, that was the title of the show, Student Debt Crisis. But a couple of quick notes about the student loan crisis. The class of 2018, 69% of the graduates of the class of 2018, so these are graduates, 69% of them took out a loan, and the average debt was just under $30,000. Parents took on $35,800 in Parent Plus loans. These are loans that are available through the federal government, fairly easy to get. And parents often turn to this loan strategy to help get their kids through school. And the biggest number of all, the most jarring number of all, is that when you add up all the student loan debt in this country, it comes out to a whopping $1.5 trillion. So we have Americans carrying credit card debt. We have student loan crisis, $1.5 trillion of debt. And then talk about car loans a little bit. Americans love their cars. The average car payment in this country is just under $500 a month. So if you think about it, if you have a couple, they could have typically $1,000 a month in payments. That's a lot of money. Of course, it depends on your income and wealth, overall wealth. But $1,000 a month for cars is a lot, especially if you also have student loan debt and credit card debt. So let's talk about ways, strategies of paying off debt. So, as I often joke, it will come as no surprise that the first thing is to have a plan to pay off debt. That might be a budget to really get a handle on where your money is going. So budgeting can be part of it. And I am mixed about the use of budget. I've said on the show before, my wife Joelle and I have never done a budget. We do track spending. We mostly, though, focus on our big goals. How much is going to go to retirement? When we had a mortgage, how much was going to go to debt payments? How much is going to go to college fund? How much is going to get reinvested into the Elliott Wealth Management Service practice? We would focus on the macro goals and less about the day-to-day budgeting. But we were never out of control. I think budgeting is important if you really have no idea where your money is going and you're sort of out of control and maybe overwhelmed. Doing a budget, even if it's just temporarily, might be worthwhile. What I also wanted to say and have a plan in paying off debt is also to focus on the why. Why are you going to do this? Because there's always reasons to spend money. To take a loan instead of working at college, to go out to dinner or travel and just put it on the credit card. To upgrade to a nicer car, who wouldn't want that? But if you focus on the why you want to get your debt paid down and eliminated, that will help keep you on track if you have an important enough why. So keep that in mind as well. So you need to have a plan. Joke, I'm a certified financial planner. I'm a planner by nature. So of course you want to start with a plan, right? The next thing is you can cut back on your spending. You know, maybe do less entertainment, less travel, maybe downgrade a car. You know, find places in your budget where you could spend less money and you could take that savings and pay down debt. The beautiful part about that is that if you pay down your debt and you eliminate your debt, then you have lots more money, lots more discretionary spending that you can be done. But while you have that debt, it soaks up a lot of your monthly income is going to debt service. So maybe cut back. The other thing is to figure out how to make more. Get a part-time job, work a little harder if you're self-employed to try and drive revenue and profits higher. Figure out a way to make more. The common term that's out there today is to have a side hustle. You know, a little part-time thing, freelancing or delivering pizza or working part-time in the family business, whatever the case may be. But if you could spend a little less, make a little more, and you have an important why, and you're purposeful, you could have a plan to pay off debt. So a few strategies. The one that I think is the most common is the snowball. For those of you that are podcast listeners, one of the most popular podcasts is Dave Ramsey's podcast, and he has a best-selling book, The Total Money Makeover, and Dave Ramsey is the get-out-of-debt guru. I've mentioned him in previous episodes of this show. I agree with much of what he says. I wouldn't say we agree 100% of the time, but paying off debt is a very noble goal. And he's an advocate of the snowball strategy, which means you list your debts from the smallest one to the largest one. Now, often there's some confusion in this. It's not by category. So many people, as an example, have multiple student loans. And so if you have 5 student loans, you're going to break those 5 loans into their individual parts. You don't group them together. You put the 5 on the list, along with other debts that you have. The snowball method usually avoids your mortgage. That's usually the biggest debt anyway, although not always. But you list your debts, smallest to largest, not by category, by individual debt. And then you begin the process of paying the minimums on all of the debts and taking whatever extra money that you have available to you to pay down debt from income and or savings, and you throw it at the smallest debt. And the idea is you want to knock that smallest debt off. And once you knock that smallest debt off, you go to the next one on the list, and you build momentum by having some early success, maybe cleaning out some smaller ones. Classic example of this is you might have a small credit card debt or a small medical bill, but you start out smallest, pay minimum on everything. Whatever extra you have to pay down on the debt goes on the smallest debt first. When that's paid off, you do the same thing, now attacking the smallest debt. Used to be the second smallest, but now it's the smallest debt, and you work your way through the snowball. It's a very effective way to do it, and if you stick to it, you'll be very successful. Although any plan, if you stick to it, you're going to be successful. But the snowball is the first strategy I wanted to talk to you about. The second one is the avalanche strategy. And it's similar. The only difference is that you line up your debts, but instead of going smallest debt to largest debt, you go highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. From a math perspective, this is more attractive than the snowball because you are trying to get rid of your highest interest cost debt first. Often that's going to be credit cards, although it does not have to be. The advantage to the snowball, though, is you get the psychological advantage of getting some traction, some early success to hopefully feed on your psyche wanting to keep going. The avalanche is more attractive from a purely math perspective because you're going after the highest interest rates debt first. And so it works like the snowball. You would list the debts, highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. You'd pay the minimum on everything. And anything that you have extra to apply to the debt reduction, you would put on the highest interest rate debt. And when that one is paid off, you do the exact same thing, moving on to what was the second most expensive interest rate in your debt list. So those are two major strategies. One thing to keep in mind strategy-wise is to separate out consumer debt, which would be student loans, car loans, personal loans, and the dreaded credit card debt. There are others, but those are the major ones. And separate those out from mortgages, or more broadly, debt that's backed by assets. There's a way of thinking, which I largely subscribe to, that there's a difference in debt that's based on consumer spending, and that's bad debt. And then there's good debt. This, I think, was coined by Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a best-selling book. He would often talk about the differences between good debt and bad debt. The aforementioned Dave Ramsey, he doesn't really subscribe to that, but there is a difference between mortgages and debts backed by assets. Small business owners will sometimes have debt that's backed by the business assets. And that's not necessarily good debt, but it's certainly not as harmful and problematic as consumer debt. So we're going to separate out, in your thinking about debt reduction, the consumer debt and the mortgages. The consumer debt is bad, very bad. The mortgages and debt backed by assets, not ideal, but not as problematic. A couple of things that you could do to help pay off debt is, if you have good credit and you have multiple credit cards, or you are open to getting other credit cards, a lot of these issuers will do balance transfer deals. Now, let me just put out a word of caution. You're dealing with institutions that structure these because they're going to win. And when I say win, they're likely to get interest and more money from you. So it's a competitive game you would be playing. But I could probably go to one of my credit card issuers today. I actually didn't check this, but I'm pretty sure. And I could probably go and borrow tens of thousands of dollars from them on a balance transfer. And there's really no underwriting. It's going to be based on my history with the issuer, my credit limit with the issuer, and my overall credit score, which in my case is very good, or would be considered excellent credit. And I could do a balance transfer. They'll send me the check, or they'll use the money, and I could send it to another credit card debt or personal loan or car loan or whatever the case is. A lot of times these credit card issuers will do these deals, and you'll get 0% for 12 to 24 months. And that allows you to reduce your interest rate cost and buy you some time. The trick is that if you pay late, they're going to start charging you interest. If you do not pay it off at the end of the period, the interest rate is going to skyrocket. And there are other rules. You really have to make sure you follow all of their rules to keep the deal, because one slight move in the wrong direction with them and you disobey one of the rules, the small print in the agreement, and the 0% will go to some astronomical interest rate. So it's a competitive game. Years ago, I did use this successfully. I played the game very well, but you really, really have to pay attention to the details. But if you could do that, you could take a 10-plus interest rate credit card debt and maybe drive that down to 0